Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 64 of Be With Me. We've been walking through the New Testament. Thank you for joining us. We're in 1 Corinthians. We're in chapter 14. We're in a section that's going to be titled Orderly Worship. And I want you to listen today because my title is Gathering with Limits. Listen to all the limits that are going to be spoken. We're in a section where he's going to talk about order, and there's a reason for it. That is, we desire decency and ordering with the gathering of believers. Just yesterday, we talked about what some of the results of that were supposed to be. That is, when outsiders showed up and they came in, they would be convicted, they would be called to account, the secrets of their heart would be unconcealed or revealed, they would crumble bodily, they would fall on their face. In other words, their body would respond as their spirits would mirror their spirits, and they would begin to acclaim and worship and confess and hopefully join the community. So similarly here today, he's going to talk about the order of Christian worship when the body is gathered. So listen here. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 26. What then, brothers, when you come together, each one has a hymn, a lesson, a revelation, a tongue, or an interpretation. Let all things be done for building up. So the big purpose there. 27. If any speak in a tongue, let there be only, note the limits here, 2 or 3, each in turn, and let someone interpret. But if there's no one to interpret, let each of them keep silent in church and speak to himself and to God. Verse 29, let 2 or 3 prophets speak, and let the others weigh what is said. If a revelation is made to another sitting there, let the first be silent. For you can all prophesy one by one, so that all may learn and be encouraged. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. Then he's going to go on to talk about women in the church, and he's going to talk about that this is a command. We'll branch into those things tomorrow. So I was very intrigued by all the limits that are placed here. First of all, worship begins with the end in mind, that order and worship and witness and knowledge happen during this. And I appreciate that the people here are prepared. That first limit here is the limit of preparation. It says some people come with a hymn, some people come with a lesson, some people come with a tongue, some with an interpretation. So there's preparation and there's planning, which I think is an excellent way to start the gathering of believers together. The second thing is that they're ordered by purpose. That is, there is an end, begin with the end in mind. They want to get to orderliness. Why? So that the common good can be established, so that understanding can be established, so that there's encouragement that happens. So they're shooting for something here. And so they're limiting a bunch of different things to get to that goal. They're limited here by the word. Paul is going to say tomorrow, I didn't read it for you here today, that I'm writing a command of the Lord here. So that this whole thing is constrained by the word, not by opinion. This is this process, and this is a plan of God that he wants us to know. It's a command, not a suggestion. Next is it's limited by time. So he's talking about the order of the service, that if there's tongues, then there needs to be interpretation. If there's no interpretation, then there should be no tongues. Why? Because it's limited by understanding. He wants to build up the body, and there's no tongues without an interpretation, because that doesn't build up the body. It doesn't say you can't speak in tongues on your own. Just in this environment, in this structure, tongue speakers are to be silent unless there is accurate interpretation. Next, it's limited by discernment. So prophetic speech he's going to talk about here is going to be weighed by other prophets. So there's this guarding of the truths, and the primary responsibility of these prophets and church leaders and this process that we're describing here today is to describe and even defend what is taught. So remember, prophets, in my definition, this is my definition, prophecy is the spontaneous teaching that comes to a prepared mind that results in accurate encouragement and building up of the body. It is done by recognized, vetted, and called church leaders, and it joins the human faculty of the mind, which includes thinking and study and preparation, and adds into this prepared environment spontaneous ideas, discernment, thoughts, illustrations, and disclosure. And overall, it's consistent with the canon of Scripture. So that's a big definition, but that's an important one. And in the context of this, and in this context of prophecy, what prophecy is, in the context of what the church is and the church is gathered, in this, it probably includes elders and leaders and overseers, the people that occupy that one particular office, the shepherds, the pastors, and the teachers. All right, so we see here that all these limits here, we have limitations of, we're limited by the word, we're limited by purpose, we're limited by time, we're limited by focusing on understanding, we're limited by discernment of the particular gift, specifically like prophecy, and we're limited by people's giftedness. That is that prophets, non-prophets shouldn't be speaking prophetically. You don't have a green light just to do everybody in his own way. Everybody is supposed to be examining himself, discerning, judging yourself. Just like when you came to the Lord's table, I think when we come to worship, we're supposed to ask, what is my place here? Let it be limited by Scripture, let it be limited by order, and let it be limited by giftedness. So my conclusion today is the gathering together has many, many limits. Tomorrow we'll talk about the limits of the word of the Lord and the limits about women who speak. Thanks for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.